Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Charlton Live, sponsored by the British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom, and Bathroom Installation. My name is Louis Mendes. This is the big match preview, and this evening's show will be gearing up for Saturday's trip up to Barnsley, Oakwell, our destination this weekend. Joining me to look ahead to that game, first up, top right of the screen, Mr. Tom Walling. How you doing, Tom?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been at this top table before. Usually I'm down the bottom because I'm late. But yeah, I'm good. I've calmed down since Sunday, so that's good news. Much better. Thank you. So yeah, calmed down since Saturday, so that's the big news.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'm glad. I'm sure we'll get you rolled up again at some point. And also joining us now, top of the screen, because I swapped him over just to wind Tom up, is Mr. Benji Cloak. Ben, I assume you're eating Twiglets?
Yeah, I've got the pack variety and the box variety. Took me a while to get home, so yeah, looking forward to the show now. I've got that all set up and ready, and I can sing "We are top of the screen." Say "We are top of the screen."
Yeah, the working man's dinner of choice. That is two variations of Twiglets for Ben Cloak. So on this evening's show, as I said, we'll gear up for Saturday's game with Barnsley. Got a couple of just talking points from interviews with Michael Appleton over the last couple of weeks to talk about. Obviously the contracts for Corey Blackett-Taylor and Dobson, which he's been asked about, transfer situation. I thought maybe if we get a chance, maybe in the first half of the show, talk about, if possible, which loanees we'd ship out, which ones we've had at the start of this season that maybe we'd be happy to let go to make room in the squad. Then in the second half of the show, we'll focus more on the game with Barnsley. Hopefully we're going to hear from Ian from the Reds Report. We'll hear from Appleton as well. We'll preview the game ourselves. Yeah, the talking point that appears to have been thrust upon us this evening, though, before we look at the Barnsley game, Ben, is I think it's one of the Lancashire papers are reporting that Paddy Bower, former Charlton hero, of course, or always Charlton hero, if we're being honest, is apparently going to be put up for a loan. I mean, before we get into the justification of whether we'd afford that or whether we'd be in for him, I mean, would you take him back?
Definitely, 100%. I just think this is the key position where we need players in. And we've talked about the lack of characters, the lack of leaders, the lack of experience in our side. We've got a youthful side. And for someone, obviously, he's a fan's favourite from his time. And obviously, the last touch of the ball he had for us was one of the best moments in our Charlton history. Yeah, for him to come back would be big for us. Obviously, we've got a banquet now at the club who looks like he's heading back to Udinese. So to get someone in, these are the kind of players that we should be looking at, because championship players that can't get in their squad are probably the kind of players we're looking to get in. Now, someone like Bauer, who's proven in this league, is someone that we should be looking at. I mean, a banquet, a youth player who hasn't had experience in League One, we've tried with, and obviously it hasn't worked. So someone like him, experienced in League One, obviously he's had Preston are doing well this season, aren't they? And he's not getting in the squad. So, yes, would love to see someone like him come back.
Now, obviously, how realistic that is, we don't really know exactly what sort of wages he's on at Preston. I imagine it'll be a fair bit higher than what we're playing these days, but whether there'd be a deal to be done there. Obviously, it's very early days. It's just a Lancashire Post posted it this evening, and then it got put on the Charlton hashtag, and everyone's going crazy, including All Hell Let Loose. I haven't said hello to everyone in the chat, actually, so All Hell Let Loose is the first one who said Ryan Lowe only has praise for Patrick Bauer, but he could be allowed to leave Preston on loan in January. You German beauty, come home. Evening as well to Andrew, to Peter, to Alan, to Robert, to Dave. Shiny Phil's in there as well, as is Keith. Yeah, a lot of love for Paddy Bauer in there. Robert's saying Bauer on loan would be a statement of intent, but can it actually be done? I mean, that's the realism aspect we have to say. If you look at the players we have brought in on loan, we're not probably seeing that many who've done the amount of championship games that Patrick has done, if that makes sense. You know, the sort of, other than maybe Pan Kamara has obviously done a lot of League One games. Are we generally picking up players who are that experienced on loan? Tom, I mean, could you, positionally, you imagine he'd be a good fit, but I mean, could you see a world where that deal would happen?
Well, it seems very unfair on our current crop of defenders to say be a good fit in. Who knows? He might not waltz his way back into the first 11 that easily. But yeah, a bit like Benji, really. I'd love it. But as you say, it's it would be out of keeping with the signings we've made so far in terms of loanees. I think they're either youngsters or they're. I know Bauer's had his injury problems, but they come with a bit of an injury problem, or they've come with a concern. They're not people that are kind of proven, established, experienced players, apart from maybe Alfie May, and that's only at this level and below. So, yeah, I'd love it. Obviously, I think he's a very good player. I think he'd certainly bring that leadership quality and that grabbing the game quality as a defensive player that we spoke about a lot sadly on Sunday. Can I see it happening? I just don't know, to be honest. I think we all know that's the area we need to strengthen, and the more players and the decent players we can bring in there, the better. But yeah, it would just be a change. I think it'd be a change attack, but I'd absolutely take it, and I'd love it if we could get it done. And who knows, that emotional bond is there, right? And I know players, when they leave a club, that they move on and they focus on their next club because it's a job. But scoring a goal like that at Wembley is going to be etched in his memory somewhere, and it's still going to mean he's got a soft spot for this club as well. So if we're up against a few League One clubs, that might nudge it our way. But realistically, if someone down the bottom of the Championship maybe looks at him and thinks he might help them get out of trouble, you'd imagine he'd prefer to stick there. So yeah, going to be a tricky one, I think.
Jake said, would definitely take Bauer. Fitness issues may be a concern, but he will no doubt be an aerial presence who can handle physical strikers. I'd still look for another centre-back, 2 full-backs, and an attacker. Andrew says Bauer back seems too good to be true, but I thought the same about signing Alfie. Dan's thrown our hat into the ring for Ronan Curtis as well. Has been announced he's leaving Portsmouth. So I think he was injured and didn't sign a contract in the summer, and now he's done with his sort of training. When you get injured with a club, you end up staying with them for a while while you recover, and that's what seems to have happened. Keith saying we should bring him home. At least he would command our back line. Shiny Phil says Baker would be a great signing, and presumably talking about Robert Baker, who messaged earlier, and this is talking about Bauer. But obviously, we set the hairs running on that one. There's absolutely no indication whatsoever that we're in for him at this moment in time, but people have asked us to talk about it, so there you go. I'm sure we'd all be very pleased if Paddy Bauer fancied coming back. Just before we get on to the contracts and the stuff that we're going to talk about with regards trade, like the loanees and the transfers and that, Ben, I thought maybe just at the top of the show we should obviously talk about how important this game is at Barnsley for ourselves. We'll focus on it more in the second half of the show, but it feels like a big one for us. So especially after what happened last weekend with the 2 late goals for Cambridge. Now, we've only won 2 of our last 5, if you put it that way, but we're unbeaten in those 5. We've only lost 2 of our last 14 or 15 league games. We're not on an awful run of form, but we know we're now going into this difficult Christmas period with injuries and going up to a Barnsley side who not as good at home as you would have thought. I think they've lost as many as they've won at home in the league this season, but it's always been a tough place for us to go, and if we are to get a morale boosting victory on Saturday, then that could prove quite important for us.
Yeah, we do need that morale boosting victory, don't we? Especially away from home, where we've struggled massively this season. When I think of Barnsley, I think of the 6-0 game that me and you were at, and some amazing memories that day. God, that seems a world away now, doesn't it? But yeah, look, we go into the game lacking confidence after the Cambridge game and obviously our away form. But look, as you said, their home form hasn't been great. I know they've had some sticky results lately, especially that Horsham result in the FA Cup. So we've got to take confidence from that second half performance going into it, and some of the performance from the players, i.e. Daniel Kahn, who made a massive impact. Michael Hector, I thought, had a really good game. Chem Campbell obviously scored that goal. Obviously, we don't know the team news yet. There might be a couple coming back from injury. I don't know how long McGrandles was supposed to be out for, etc. But yeah, there were positives in that second half, but it's addressing the both halves of the game, isn't it? I mean, we had that amazing first half against Wigan. We're away from home, which shocked us all. So we need to try and replicate that. But obviously, we're lacking on numbers. But yeah, I think, look, momentum's huge in football, isn't it? I mean, if we can even nick a draw up there. I said last week, going into this 5 fixtures up until the new year, we had we're playing one side that are above us, the rest are below us. Obviously, we've played Cambridge now, and this side, Barnsley, are above us, so it's our trickiest game. So yeah, look, hopefully we can take some positives from last week and some of the performances, and try and rectify the mistakes, if you like. We'll go on to talk about that, I imagine, but yeah, that away form needs to be addressed, doesn't it?
Yeah, Keith saying that the 6-0 apart, we always seem to struggle at Barnsley. It's going to be a tough one. And yeah, I mean, I was struck by, again, you almost need to remind yourselves that if you look at our league form, because it's being punctuated with some very disappointing cup results recently, and obviously the injury problems, it's probably as easy to forget that we're not losing a lot of games in the league at the moment, Tom. And like I say, the injury problems add to that, and we were all really, the word that people kept using to describe us after the show on Sunday was sad, and we were quite sad. But as Alan points out, we need wins. So if we are going to make a dart to try and make the second half of this season interesting, we got to start picking them up. And our record against sides in the top 6 or the top 10 hasn't been great this season. So I mean, these are all little things that we need to see change this weekend. So again, if we can go up there and get something, it could make a big difference, and maybe just turn that feeling around as we go into this really busy period.
Well, it's a big point swing, isn't it? That's the thing, because they're a few points ahead of us, but just below the top 6, I think. So we get that win and stop them getting 3 points at the same time. That's huge. And yeah, I, again, calmed down a bit since Sunday, but still have to keep reminding myself we didn't lose on Saturday, because, you say we didn't, but we got as close to losing as it's possible to without, because it definitely felt like that. So, yeah, our league form has been okay. We have been picking up points. We've been pretty consistent. But you look at the recent games that I can think of, Carlisle away, should be going there and winning, had chances to win it, threw it away. Obviously, the game on Saturday, threw it away at the end. And so, okay, we're not losing, but we're probably, realistically, there's probably 6 or 8 points that we can figure out, which I know it's easy to say, what if, but this isn't a what if. This is just, with a tiny bit of discipline, we'd probably have 6 to 8 points more than we have now, and then we'd be pretty much there with Barnsley. So that's what's frustrating, I think. Yes, we're not losing as many games as perhaps it feels like, but we're chucking games away, and we're getting just losing sloppy points. And yeah, when you come up against a team who are 3 or 4 places above you, whatever stage of the league you're at, it's obviously a little bit bigger, unless it's kind of 10th versus 11th and there's one game left in the season. And as I say, if we were to win this, and as Benji says, going into that run over Christmas, if we can get 2 or 3 wins by, early New Year, by maybe after the Port Vale game, we'll be in a very, very different place than we are now, and realistically maybe could start talking about playoffs again. So it's difficult, isn't it? You don't want to get too high and you don't want to get too low, as Curbs always says. But when you throw a game away from 2-0 up with 4 minutes left, it's hard to do that on a Sunday show, but maybe a little bit more rational on a Thursday show, and you've got that positivity going into a new game, and you think, yeah, you know what? This team maybe can get something away at Barnsley despite everything, and you're going with that hope. So that's kind of how I'm feeling at the moment. And yeah, the boys just need to go and deliver. That's the thing. And ultimately, too many times recently, they've gone and thrown it away.
Yeah, I mean, as Aaron points out, we might not be losing, but it's a decline in performances for 3 or 4 weeks now that have really affected us. And like I say, it's not only league games, but those cup games have really thrown a dent in it. Like the Gillingham performance was, I think, the worst we've seen this season. Even if you go back to the Cray Valley home game, these are still things that sort of punctuate that league form, which is okay. And which is also, I think, why you find Michael Appleton sort of defending the run we're on quite a bit in the league. I mean, we'll hear him in his preview later. He speaks about if we can get, I think he said something like 8 points from every 5 games, then we won't be too far off. I mean, statistically, we would be off a little bit if we did that for the rest of the season. But yeah, he's obviously trying to garner some positivity going into it, which perhaps the performances of the last few weeks on the whole don't necessarily deserve, but obviously the results are slightly tighter. All hell let loose says, what does the chart say? It doesn't say anything good, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to say. Jake saying, very difficult to speculate positively away from home. Anything can happen, but I sense a 2-0 defeat, maybe 2-1 if we start Alfie in his best position, which is either number 10 or out wide. Alan Shepherd's been asking how many clean sheets we had. Teams find it easy. I think we've only had 3 all season, which is definitely amongst the worst in the League One sort of rankings, and how many times we found that it's our defence that's let us down this season, even if on paper the two centre halves who played against Cambridge had a good game, but obviously we still managed to concede 2 goals. Right, let's talk about contracts for Dobbo and Corey Blackett-Taylor, because obviously it's been an ongoing saga now. Let's hear what Michael Appleton said when he was asked about that the other day.
Obviously, as you know, I leave that to the hierarchy to deal with the contracts and stuff. All I can say is that, them two, they're turning up. They're turning up. They're doing the work, and they're very much contributing to the team at the minute. And every now and again, the levels have dropped. But I would say that with both of them, they've been reasonably consistent this year. And obviously Corey has his moments, and he'll be frustrated sometimes that he doesn't sort of get into games earlier than he probably does, and it gets a little bit longer. But in terms of Dobbo, obviously it wasn't his best game today, but he's been outstanding since I've come through the door. Do you know what I mean? He's been a leader. He's got the captain's armband, and he has been a leader. He's been a leader on and off the pitch, and I know he'll be one of them that I can rely on every single week.
So there we go. That's Michael speaking about the contract situation for Dobbo and Corey after the Cambridge game on Saturday. This has been a bit of an ongoing saga now. It feels like a while ago that Andy Scott mentioned that those two have both been offered new deals. It's not, it's not something we haven't dealt with before at Charlton, where a player gets offered a new deal and it goes quiet for a long time. Patrick Bauer being one of those, actually, when he left a few years ago. But yeah, what are you making of the fact that we haven't really heard a great deal yet on these two? Do you think they're biding their time, Ben? Do you think that there's any chance one or both of them will go or stay, or would they be movers in January? Which way do you see it going with those two?
I personally think I don't think Dobbo would leave in January. Maybe Corey might, but I don't. I think Dobbo would stick with us till the end of the season, as he's a club captain, and see how things go. But look, both of them deserve a chance in the Championship. They're both 26 years old. And I think, especially with someone like Dobbo, he's consistently proven himself to us that he's been a consistently good performer. Every game he plays for us, he plays his heart out. And you can never knock his performances, even if he's had the odd bit of a bad touch or not tracked back fully in a game. You can just be like, he doesn't do that the whole way through the game. I think he deserves his chance at the Championship or above. And look, if we were other fans looking in on another club, you'd go, oh, surely if you're that kind of player, you let your contract run down and it's easier for another club to sign you, right? And because we're looking at it as Charlton fans, we of course don't want to lose a player. I think I've not been bothered about players leaving since Scott Parker broke my heart all those years ago. And I think with someone like George Dobson now, I would be gutted to see him leave, because he really epitomises what I feel it is to be a Charlton Athletic player. Does he have the quality to step up? We don't know, do we? Because he's not really had the opportunity. But a player backs himself with their ability, don't they? With Corey, the same. I think a little bit different. I think with Corey, he's quite inconsistent, but with wingers, you do find that. But again, someone like him will back his own ability, and they'll have agents swarming around, giving him an opportunity. And look, if they've only got 6 months left to go on their contract, then they'll be getting offers from clubs. And do we take that now as a club so we get a bit of money for him? What are these players saying? But I imagine with George as the captain, I can see him saying, look, I'll stick around to the summer. But yeah, it's tricky, because if we don't go up, then how many years do they want to see their opportunity go, and then they don't get that chance?
Yeah, I mean, Michael said, listening to Michael Appleton's clip there, he says, this says to me he knows they're already gone. Andrew says that Andy Scott thinks they're both replaceable. Yes, but with what? And David said it sounded like that Appleton was passing the buck to Scott. I wonder if Appleton and Scott are on the same page. I mean, the contracts are Andy Scott's sort of department now, so whether he's passing the buck or not, obviously that's up for debate, or whether he's just saying that's his job to do it. But certainly, the manager and the and the technical director need to be on the same page. I think there was clearly a breakdown between Holden and Scott earlier on in the season. So we do need that relationship to be good. You know, a lot of people, and we'll hear the clip in a few seconds' time actually about transfers. Tom were asking if that was almost a message to Andy Scott on Sunday. In fact, I'll play it now because so we heard part of it on Sunday, but I just want to play the whole thing because Michael Appleton talks about the quality of signings we need to make in January in the next few windows as well.
It's going to be massively important, but I think probably, in fairness to all the players that are either fit or not available for me at the minute, I think, you know, it'd be stupid of me and daft of me not to say that if we're going to have any chance of, you know, sort of getting out of this league, whether it's, you know, this season, next season, the season after, the transfer windows are massive. You know, and let's face it, they have to be a million times better than what they have in the last couple of windows.
How many players do you reckon you need just finally from you?
Hard to say. But it certainly won't be one or two, put it that way. There's going to be more than a handful, or I'd expect more than a handful to come through the door. Listen, at the end of the day, if we want to compete at the top end of this league, that has to happen. If not, we'll be where we have been for the last 2 or 3 seasons and just be a mid-table team. And I don't want that. I'm not come here to do that. And I'm sure everyone else is in the same boat. So I think that, you know, January hopefully will be an exciting time for Charlton fans.
So there we go. So I played part of that clip on Sunday, but I wanted to get the whole clip in because obviously Michael Appleton also spoke about the quality of the signings that we've made in the last, he said, couple of windows. So, I mean, on paper, a couple of windows means 2 windows, which means the 2 that Andy's been in charge of, which is obviously, well, yeah, it was quite interesting. I was hoping that Mickey Appleton will bring out the Excel table we made last Thursday and show that, look, average of 3 out of 10 for some of these signings, but he didn't quite go that far, Tom. But again, you know, people said on Sunday, is that sort of like almost a challenge to the owners? You know, Luke saying Andy Scott wants to develop youth to sell on, and Appleton wants more experience in the side. David saying Scott's youth sales strategy won't win promotion. I mean, it's clear that those two need to be on the same page. But I guess there's likely to always be an element of friction between what a manager wants who has to win games in the next few weeks and what maybe a technical director who is looking at a big picture and thinks that, you know, we can bring players in now and they'll mature and become valuable to us. There will always be, I guess, 2 slightly different needs there for the two different fellas in charge of those roles.
And not only that, Andy Scott is obviously in charge of whatever money these people have, however big or small that is. They are tasking him with using that money wisely. So he's thinking of that, whereas Appleton is in charge of managing the side. So as far as he's concerned, he just wants the best players he can get in. And he don't really care how much they cost. So there's that friction. I don't think the 2 can't go hand in hand. I think you can have a blend. We've seen that blend in the past. You look at the likes of people like Joe Aribo, for example, was kind of crucial to that Bowyer promotion side, and he came through the youth, and there were other players like Solly and others in that side as well. So it can be done. The couple of windows is interesting to go back to that Bowyer side, because obviously that was 2019 and we went up. And you'd argue ever since we came back down in 2020, obviously we're still here. So it's that many windows have been poor, because otherwise we'd have gone up already. So the proof is in the pudding. It's been three or 4 seasons now down here consecutively. That tells us if there's 2 windows a year, that's 6 or 8 transfer windows that have all been poor. So there's a lot of work to be done. You don't often hear a manager say at this stage, he's not saying we need a complete turnover, but he isn't far away from saying that. They usually are saying, 3 or 4 more and we've got half a chance. But Appleton's being quite bullish, but I guess he's got nothing to lose because, these aren't his players. So he's making do with what he can. And ultimately, if they don't want it, then they'll give him the hook and he'll go somewhere else. And maybe he's not that bothered about that. Maybe he's like, well, yeah, show your hand kind of thing. So it's a difficult one. I think largely I agree with him. That's the problem. We do need a big overhaul because, as we've said week in, week out, the current team are just not good enough or not putting in performances good enough to go up. So they need a shake-up. They need something. And the more players that come in and shake that up, for me, the better.
Andrew said it's the manager who carries the can, and that's why I say, yeah, you often, like I say, you get two slightly different aims, short-term aims, certainly between the manager and the technical director. Yeah, and there was a comment as well saying from All Hell Let Loose saying if Apples doesn't get more than a handful of new players, will he leave? I mean, I'd be very surprised if we have a bad window and Appleton just gives up and walks out the door. You don't often see that with managers, especially ones with us. They tend to put up with quite a lot. Which makes it difficult. Sam saying on Dobbo and Corey saying I think it's sadly that they will both go, especially if Appleton is leaving the discussions to the board. I'm surprised if he doesn't have a chat though about the future. The future plans. Alan Shepherd says, look on the bright side, Millwall next season. Just a little side note. So I was at QPR last night. They let me loose on a different club for once. And after the QPR game finished, I went into the main show and I was chatting to the presenter who had done the Millwall game, and they brought on Steve Morrison, the former Millwall striker, to effectively bully me and keep taking the mick about how they always took 6 points off Charlton. So that was a fun evening, wasn't it? Yeah, Luke says nobody else wanted Appleton, and I don't see why he'd leave at this point. We've got a couple of minutes. I did want to just throw it out there in terms of our loanees as to which ones we'd keep and which ones we try and let go. So, I mean, Ben, you mentioned earlier on in the show, I mean, I think it was the Irish Independent who were reporting that the defender from there, James Abankwa from Udinese, might return to the Italian club because he's played effectively 2 league games, both of them out of position, and he's just not going to look in now. Obviously, we've also got Pan, we've got Louis Watson, we've got Chem Campbell and Slobodan Tedic. I mean, of those 5, how many would you like to see move on, if possible, to try and create room for others in the squad? And, do you assume that we'd be able to replace them with better?
Yeah, I'd like to see us replace these like Patrick Bauer again, as people are saying, probably with his wages and that, it might not happen. But yeah, I think we've tried a lot. There's youngsters there, isn't it? There's too many youngsters and look, we can't see these guys in training. A lot of fans are going, why is Chem Campbell not playing? Why is Tedic not playing more, etc.? I mean, Appleton's obviously not picking them based on training performances, etc. So, yeah, I mean, with Tedic, he seems to be frozen out now. I haven't seen he's injured in the last couple of games. He's not been on the bench, especially for that Reading EFL trophy game. He wasn't on the bench then, so it seems like he might have his loan cancelled short as well. So yeah, Abankwa again seems like he's not featuring at all. So him, Tedic. I'd like to keep Louis Watson. I really think there's a good player in there. Again, we're not seeing enough of him, but Appleton obviously has his own view of that. I imagine he'll play this weekend because I know they play with 3 at the back, Barnsley, so they play with quite an attacking a lot of front players. So he would help there more than a Fraser would if McGrandles is still out injured. Yeah, so I'd keep Watson. I mean, Chem Campbell, I mean, how bizarre was that last week that he actually started the game from being frozen out for so long? He scored his goal in some games this season. He has made an impact. The Oxford game set up a really good goal for Alfie May. And there was another game where he set up a goal. I can't remember it now, but I've liked the look of him when I've seen him, and we've all been baffled. But again, it comes down to day by day training, doesn't it? So, yeah, I personally would keep Chem, but again, if Appleton sees that a little bit more, Pan is tricky, isn't it? Eh? I mean, there's a player in there, and we see glimpses of it, but it depends how his injury is, how his recovery is. And it's like, if he goes back to Ipswich, he's not going to play there. I mean, they're on their way to the Prem. So do we keep him and take up another spot? But depends, doesn't it? If we've got players lined up ready to take these loan spots that we've got. But I would personally keep Pan because I do really think there's a player there. But again, it depends on his fitness.
Yeah, there we go. And Spamfish says that all the loans have been poor. Aaron rightly pointing out getting Kirk off the wage bill is key, and if we can, that's something they tried to do in the summer and were unable to. Luke said he'd keep Watson, Louis Watson, and Chem, and obviously, as Ben says, depends how long that Pan's going to be out for. Michael said he's seen some stats about Watson that suggests he's one of the better progressive passers in the division. David only wants to see Chem and Louis Watson stay. Andrew says Chem Campbell leaning towards keeping him. Got a few more games before Jan to assess him. Yeah, which is really, it has been a bit of a bizarre one for him, but maybe we will see a bit of a run in the team for him. Right, we're going to have a quick break, and then when we come back, we will turn our attention to Saturday's trip up to Oakwell. Thinking about a new kitchen or bathroom? Find professional, independent local installers with free home surveys, itemised quotes and protected payments, trading standards approved contracts, and workmanship warranties. The British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom, Bathroom Installations accredits installers to ensure they are police checked, fully insured, and experienced. Take the risk out of home improvement. Visit bikbbi.org.uk.
Hello fellow addicts, I'm so excited to tell you all about our micropub, the River Ale House. The River Ale House is based in East Greenwich. It has 6 Pub of the Year awards, an ever-changing selection of amazing beer. It's owned by Charlton fans, walkable to the ground in just 20 minutes with buses that go direct to the Valley too. If your matchday routine includes a drink with your friends, you must join your fellow addicts in the River. See you soon.
Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. This is the big match preview. Time to turn our attention to Saturday's trip up to Oakwell. We've been joined in the chat by a Barnsley fan. Mr. Barnsley 2023 is saying Yorkshire. And then Luke says the only thing that Yorkshire is good for is puddings. So, well, Red Sport Ian can tell us if he's right or wrong then. Our Barnsley guest is joining us now. So this is Ian from Reds Report. What's Yorkshire good for other than Yorkshire puddings, Ian?
Barnsley Football Club. Simple answer.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us on this week's show. Really looking forward to a trip to one of my favourite grounds actually in League One. I think Oakwell's a proper football ground, and be an interesting game for both sides. You guys are sitting just outside the playoffs. Obviously, we're sitting just outside the playoffs as well. If you're willing to really exaggerate the word "just" in that sentence, how has this season gone so far for you guys?
A bit of a mixed bag, if I'm honest. We've had once again big turnaround at the summer, losing the manager, the coaching staff, losing players, bringing in a number of players from lower leagues, new manager for his first probably big job because he was in America, not in the MLS, he was in the league below. So away from home we've been pretty good, to be honest. At home, I would probably describe us as Marmite. When we've lost a lot of points at home this season. We've struggled as well against any of the top 8 sides. I don't think we beat any of them. Even laid a glove on some of them. So interesting game on Saturday, I would say.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for joining us. Well, luckily enough, you're not coming against the top 8 side on Saturday. You're coming up against us. Well, I hate to relive it, but I was just going to go back to the playoff final last season. Obviously, you were so close to getting promoted. Do you think this season you're in a better position to get promoted? Obviously, it's tricky with a new manager. And as you said, you're just outside the playoffs at the moment. But could you see this season being a year where you get promoted? We keep saying to other fans how we think this season is weaker than last. Do you view it the same?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You look at last season and you look at teams that were, I'm not sure, did Ipswich get 100 points? Sheffield Wednesday got 90 plus and still didn't go automatically straight up. And this season, I do believe that the standard is lower and much of a muchness, really. Quite a few of our fans tipped you guys at the start of the season with the summer that you had. Obviously, we've seen Tedic and Isted go from who played for Barnsley last season. I keep thinking we're at a little bit of a crossroads. We're either going to go on a good run and really push, or we could just end up in sort of mid-table mediocrity. It's a bit of a fine line. This time last season, November and December, we were superb and we went on a great run. And as you said, we got to the playoff final. At the minute, I don't know, it's like game by game. I can't really, it's been tough predicting our performances and results this season.
You've mentioned the 2 players I was going to ask you about already, Ian, Tedic and Isted. We haven't had much opportunity to see Isted. We saw him in the playoff final, and obviously, again, like Benji says, we won't go too much into detail, although he was excellent.
Yeah.
And Tedic,
Don't worry, I'm over it now.
Yeah, good. We've seen a little bit more of Tedic. I think for us, our goalkeeping situation is one that we're not sure who our first choice would be if Isted was fit. And with Tedic, we feel like maybe there's a player in there, but we don't really know why we're saying that. How did you find both of them as players?
Isted was loved. Isted came in. He was number 2 initially. Brad Collins then got an injury, and he just took his opportunity. And he played like he'd been at the club for a long time. It's not easy for a player to come in and suddenly start putting performances in, but he was superb, Isted. And then it kind of put Collins' nose out of joint a little bit when he came back fit and never got back in the team. So much so that Collins has moved on and gone to Coventry now. Gutted to see Harry Isted go. I was quite fortunate actually to meet up with his folks a couple of away games. They're really nice people. Always chatted with the fans, and I know he's gutted. His dad has said he's absolutely gutted that he's had these injuries and not had a chance to show you guys what he can do. I'd take him back in a heartbeat. Tedic, yeah, there's been some games where you thought superb, and then other games where you thought he's anonymous. And he's a big lad, and he's City have had him, so he can't be that bad. He had his moments, but he wasn't consistent. Sometimes he didn't always get the game time. But yeah, that was another funny one, really, that we never really truly saw what that lad could do.
It's amazing, really. So the amount of players that switch between teams in League One, and then we end up having representatives from those sides on our show, and we ask about our former players or players. They always sound exactly the same every team they go to. They're always, oh yeah, bit hit and miss, and that's exactly what we've had with Tedic so far. I mean, how do you see Saturday going then, Ian? So as you said, it's been a mixed bag at home, but I mean, you've only lost one in the last 7 or 8 in League One. So you're not on a bad run overall, but yeah, I assume you'll go into Saturday with a measure of confidence, considering we're sort of a bit hit and miss, and we have our injury problems as well.
Yeah, I looked at your results before, because we recorded our show about an hour ago, and with the three of us, I predicted 3-1 for Barnsley. I think that might be a little bit overconfident, and then we went 1-0 and 2-0. So I think it'd be a tight game. I just think we're due to click at home. We're really due to click, and I hope that the win at Reading last week, which was the first time we've actually turned a game around from being in a losing position for such a long time. I think it's a couple of seasons. It's a bizarre start that we've had, that if we go behind, we struggle. And we even did that last season with Michael Duff. So I think it'll be a tough game, but and I know we picked up a couple of injuries in that Reading game, and a couple of players haven't trained, so I can't see them playing if they're not trained during the week. But Devante Cole's in banging form. We've got plenty of options up front. We've got a plethora of strikers. The big question mark with us, we've done quite well defensively. The big question with us is last season, undoubtedly our midfield was superb. Absolute super. It was the driving force really to get us where we ended up. And this season we missed Luke O'Connell. He had an illness. He's only just come back now, and we've looked miles better since he's come back in. But the rest of them have fallen well short. So we're kind of each week thinking we're going to put a decent performance in, and then we kind of stutter. So it's a big test for us. I think these next 2 games, we've got you guys and then Stevenage at home, and it's a real acid test for us, because even though, like you say, you don't sound too confident yourselves, but if you win, you're only about 4 points behind us. I think it's a real acid test of where we really are these next 2 home games for us, especially being at home with a poor form.
Yeah, and I guess we'll use Saturday's game as the same for us, really, just to see if we have really got any chance of trying to climb back into this playoff race. Ian, it's been great to have you on. Thanks for your insight into the Tykes. I'll let you go now to go and enjoy some Yorkshire puddings and the rest of your evening.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for having us on.
Cheers. There we go. That's Ian from the Reds Report, who gave us a lowdown on Barnsley. Excellent guest as always. We always get on our shows. We're really lucky. Luke said he thinks that 3-1 is generous. I assume you mean in our respect rather than Barnsley's, because it feels like we always struggle up there. And Jake saying Devante Cole versus Terrell Thomas and Hector is a real concern. Hopefully Hector keeps up his form from the Cambridge game, and to an extent Thomas as well. I thought over the course of the 90, he was probably one of his better games for us, although he did get caught under the corner for the first goal that Cambridge scored. But yeah, I mean, I'm just getting horrible flashbacks of I think it was Owen O'Connell and Sam Lavelle running into each other and tackling each other in two of the most ridiculous goals we gave away at the end quite early on in last season. I think Ben Garner had a good rant after the game, if I remember correctly, and that was another one where Sean Clare was ball watching to the extent that he wasn't even in shot for one of the goals that we conceded, and the only reason I knew he was ball watching that bad is because of like a fan's view shot from the Barnsley end. I was like, oh, there's Sean Clare near the halfway line at one point. So yeah, hopefully we won't have a repeat of that. Yeah, interesting what you had to say about Tedic, Tom. Yeah, it sounds like he was a mixed bag there as much as he's been a mixed bag with us as well.
I think maybe even more mixed in that he seemed to think they'd had some performances. I don't know if he used the word superb, but he definitely said they were decent. Superb might have been about Eisted. So yeah, I don't feel we've ever really seen the good side of him enough. I think we've definitely seen the dreadful side, and then we've seen a player that's okay, but I don't think we've seen the other extreme yet. But as I kind of asked him, I feel like, and maybe I'm alone in this, I think I said but I watch him and I think there is a player in there. I feel like there's something and I don't know what it is. And Luke said, if City have signed him, he can't be that bad. And again, maybe that's just what I keep thinking about. But yeah, I think that's frustrating. I also thought it was interesting, the point on Eisted as well, because as I say, we've all had a bit of a back and forth, haven't we, about Ash and whether he's first team worthy. I had some mates at the Cambridge game who aren't Charlton fans but came with me, and they were all saying your keeper looks so dodgy. He doesn't look like he's got the leadership quality to marshal that back four. I thought that was interesting from people who don't see him play week in, week out. So if he's fit, if he gets a run in the team, could that make a difference? Will that be this season? We'll have to wait and see. So yeah, I was interested to ask him about both because they potentially have the chance to influence this side in a big way. And sadly for Eisted through injury and through Tedic just through whatever not clicking, we haven't seen that enough yet.
Excellent stuff. Right, let's hear Michael Appleton's thoughts ahead of the trip to Oakwell. His main press day isn't until tomorrow, but I did ask him for his thoughts just after the Cambridge game ahead of the trip up to Barnsley.
And look, they're all sort of key. They're all sort of key moments in the season because, you know, I've got a group of sort of players in there now, knowing that one or two of them are suffering, one or two of them obviously a little bit of a lack of form. But I certainly know that there's 3 or 4 of them in there as well that are doing their bit to try and, you know, make sure that they stay as strong a unit as possible. And next week will be a test. We've come through 1 or 2 tests away from home just recently over the last month or so. Obviously, the biggest one was Portsmouth. If we can put a similar sort of performance in to what we did then, we give ourselves a great chance. And it's one of them where, from a context point of view, you know, last 3 games, 5 points. It's certainly not. It's not what we will want, considering some of the positions that we've been in those games. If you think back to the Carlisle game as well, where we absolutely dominated, and we've only took a point from it. But we have took a point, and we have taken another point today. If we can get at least 3 points in the next 2 games, if we keep averaging 8 points every 5 games, we won't be a million miles away.
Yeah, there we go. That's Michael Appleton. Then, so obviously he spoke about averaging the 8 points every 5 games. But if we did that, that wouldn't quite be enough to sort of hit the heights. I mean, if you average that 1.6 points per game over the course of a season, you'd finish just outside the playoffs. And obviously, we're starting with a bit of catching up to do because of the disaster that the start of the season was for us. But yeah, you know, he is trying to find those positives from the form over recent weeks, you know, and there has been a, you know, again, get rid of the cup games, pretend you have to pretend they didn't happen if we're going to try and suggest that away from home we've been good recently. But you know, we did get a good point at Pompey and win at Wigan. Obviously, that performance at Carlisle should have got more, but it was our own fault that we didn't bend. So you can see what he's trying to try and cling to here. But yeah, we're going to need that and more, I guess, against Barnsley on Saturday, because we do have these additional injury concerns as well.
Yeah, it's obviously a very tricky game going to Barnsley. As Ian just said on the show, that he thinks they're due a run, that they're kind of on the brink of putting a run of results together, and that they might really click and hammer us, basically, it sounded like. And as we know, Devante Cole, as the comments are saying, is a very tricky striker, and one that we need to watch out for. So, as I say, looking at their formation, it does seem like they play a three at the back with wing backs, high press side that will really go at us. So I wonder if Louis will come into the side, and maybe the likes of Henry Ryler might drop out, and Kanu will come in. I think I see comments saying that, to just bolster up the attack so Alfie can drop and have that kind of free roll in the side where he seems to, a ball always lands at his feet. But yeah, look, we go into this game, lacking a bit of confidence. But as you said, we need to look for confidence in recent away performances, in the likes of the Wigan, the Portsmouth game, the Carlisle game where we should have won the game. And yeah, as I said, Barnsley haven't got the greatest home record, have they? I mean, the FA Cup game, for example, just like us, they struggled against lower league opposition. So there are flaws there, but how do we approach that? And it's all about trying to get that positive mindset. If we can try and get that momentum going up until the January, then we will be in a decent spot. As Ian said, we're not that many points behind them, and they're the likes that are thinking about the playoffs, and we're not really thinking about that at all. But I think, we need to see a lot more character, don't we? I think that was the main thing about Saturday. We should have rode that result out, and we should be sat here with 3 points rather than 1. Although it did feel like 0. So it's about how we manage the game as well as we can. And in that Wigan game we did, I'll keep relating back to that result because it just was so out of the blue, wasn't it, that we took a 3-0 lead. But again, near the end when we made subs, Michael learnt a lot from that, I imagine. So it's about, again, Hector and Thomas, I think they played really well on Saturday, apart from that switch off from the corner. Can they go ahead and do it again this Saturday? Well, hopefully they can. It's, as Tom always says, it's about having a regular back five that keep that communication going and can rely on each other. Teo let himself down with letting that free kick away / penalty, whatever you want to call it. But he did let that away. So that's something he can learn from. So, it's the defence I worry about. I think Ian was right. I think we will score a goal because we've got goals in that side, especially Alfie May. But it's the defence, especially with, he said, a plethora of attacking players. That's what I worry about.
I wanted to call that challenge from Eden a free kick, but unfortunately the referee decided to call it a penalty, didn't it? We won't keep going on about that. Obviously who leads the line then will be a big conversation. So Saturday we started obviously with May in the lone striker role, sort of the 9 role with Henry Ryler playing on the right hand side. At half time we switched to Dan Kanu going up top and Alfie going out wide, and it had an immediate effect. I assume that's how we'll start up top. Tom, is there any other way you'd like to see? I mean, Luke, obviously Tedic is still an option. Luke said he'd rather start a Yorkshire pudding up front than Tedic. Kanu should start before Tedic, said David. I assume that'll be the case, but, am I mistaken in that, Tom?
I wouldn't have the Yorkshire pudding, I don't think. But I don't think I still don't like Alfie May as a lone striker in that role. I think if he's going to play up top, he needs someone alongside him personally. I don't know enough about Barnsley's defence to know if actually that would work. But if I'm just focusing on us, I think Kanu would be my first choice. I know we talk a lot about not putting too much on youngsters, but I think at the moment that's probably the best option. And he's obviously a man in form and in confidence at the moment. And if not, I think Tedic probably is the natural backup to that sort of role. I think the game came too early for Ryler, so you're either putting May out wide or Tyrese, if he's fit, then him out wide. So, I see what Jake is saying about May behind Kanu. I think that's what I'd like. Maybe Chem Campbell, as he says. I saw him talk earlier about Fraser as well, so he basically is giving me my script. But, I'm not sure Fraser's been brilliant either in answer to his question. I don't think shocking, but I certainly don't think he's been worthy of keeping that spot in midfield. So I think there's an argument Louis Watson comes in. As I say, Chem Campbell didn't do a lot wrong on Saturday. Sorry. I think I said on Sunday show he didn't blow me away, but he didn't do a lot wrong. So there's options there. But to go back to the original question about the number 9, for me it would be Kanu. I think that would be my first choice.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, a few points there from Jake. All hell let loose, saying that hopefully they should be a bit recharged now after having this week off. But yeah, Jake says, not sure if this is an unpopular opinion, but he says Fraser has been shocking lately. I mean, I don't think it's unpopular to say he hasn't been at his best. You know, there's been quite a few people speaking about that. Jake says if the midfield don't move into space and come short, then we can only expect Michael Hector long balls straight into the defenders. The game depends entirely on wherever the essential midfielders move. And as you said, he said he'd have May and Carney with Chem and Corey on the flanks. I'd also start Watson over Fraser in the midfield. The only thing you have to qualify that with, and you know, it was only a few weeks ago that everyone was screaming for Louis Watson to be starting games, but he was poor at Gillingham, as was everyone, of course. I wasn't at Reading, but I think a couple of people said he was. If he featured there, he wasn't at his best. Ben, you watched that game, which I didn't because I was out, so you may remember better than that. So it isn't perhaps quite the straight choice between Fraser and Watson that we thought it was a couple of weeks ago. But like we say, you know, as I say, almost every week with Fraser, I always feel like there's a bit more from him. Like he can play a great pass at times, but does he do it enough? And do games pass him by at times? And is away at Barnsley one where you go, you know, Michael goes with experience in those sort of games, as we saw away at Carlisle. You know, he said he wanted the experience of Fraser over Watson. So it'll be very fascinating to see which way he goes with those two in the midfield on Saturday.
Yeah, we all know Fraser's got that X factor, don't we? That he's got that killer ball that can break up a defence. And don't forget, obviously, he fed the ball to Corey on Saturday. He crossed the ball and Chem scored, so he was part of the play. I think with Fraser, I think he just comes with that expectation, doesn't he? That he's not quite lived up to with us, whether that's the people around him, whether that's his attitude. I mean, I don't know if many people saw, but Dean Holden wrote a article in the week, and he said Scott Fraser's the best number 10 in the league. And
never played him in number 10 recently. I don't think I've ever seen him play number 10 in the last few years, but...
Again, I was quite surprised to see him say that, because I don't remember Dean playing him in that position that much. And also, it's like, if he keeps saying that to Scott Fraser, then does Scott Fraser think maybe he's too good for us as we're battling around mid-table? Yeah, I kind of think as well with Fraser, he's a bit like Gilby. I always thought there was more there from Gilby. I kept expecting Gilby to reminisce the days at MK Dons when he was banging them in and scoring loads of goals from midfield. And Fraser did score a few last season for us as well. We can't forget that. But yeah, look, we just hope for like that consistent performance from him. And as we've just said, will we get the best from him, pushing him forward? And do you need someone else to sit there with Dobson, i.e. a Watson or a McGrandles if he's fit, so to let him roam free a little bit more? But then do you restrict Alfie May, because he seems to love roaming free, pinging balls and then arriving in the box at the right time? Look, it's going to be a battle up there, as we know with recent performances up at Barnsley. They do give us a good game. The fans get right behind them, and they are the team that are above us. So, and they are at home and we're away from home, and obviously with our record. So, yeah, look, we know we need personalities and characters in this side. Fraser is one player that's been there, done it. We're just crying out for him to give us that consistent performance from him. But then again, we are crying out for a lot from this team. As you said, Watson in the Reading game, yeah, he got his chance from the off and was fairly quiet. But he's a youngster, he's learning his trade. So going to Barnsley, it is a bit of a tough place to go for us. Will we see his true self? Well, proof's in the pudding and up in the training coming up to it. So, yeah, we rely on Apples to pick the best one there for us.
Andrew saying he wants to see Carnu start. Corey should be the only out-and-out Winger David saying we need to compete in wide and central positions when not in possession, not be a soft touch. Yeah, and Jake, fairly pointing out that form comes through match fitness, and I think Louis Watson's poor performances were due to being dropped. Same for Lucas Ness, as Ness had played every game. We could have seen his qualities from last season. You can easily apply the same logic for Fraser. On form, Louis Watson added more value though to an on-form Fraser. In my view, yeah, I mean, all hell let loose saying that Fraser should be a leader, but is he? Yeah, probably. I don't know. Is he, Tom? I don't know how you'd answer that.
I think he should be. I think Hector should be. I think when we go all the way back to, I don't know if it was the pre-season podcast or after the Orient game, when we were talking about a sort of different vibe in this squad, which has very much disappeared now. I think we talked about the fact that we had a bit of a spine there. We had, Lee Byrne was only into his second season, but leadership qualities in terms of his age. I know he hasn't played a lot of football above this level, or any maybe above this level, but a leader in terms of the way he was on the pitch. I think we probably talked about Dobbo and Fraser in the middle and Hector at the back. And we were like, if you've got them four in the side, you've probably got a good spine. And I think we probably included Ash in that at the time. So yeah, I feel like ever since Fraser's been here, we've expected a little bit more from him. He's not alone in that. There's plenty of players that are, and he's certainly not the worst of some of the bad players we've had. I think he offers a lot to us. But as we've said plenty of times, I think sometimes we just have to carry him. And he can go missing in games. And if you're a leader, you don't do that. You look at Dobson, you always know where he is. Usually he's crunching the player with the ball and sorting us out. So yeah, that's the disappointment with Fraser. But then on his day, he can pick a pass and get us a goal. So he's a difficult one, really.
Yeah, probably haven't got time to go into it. So I was going to talk about the Hector redemption arc, because we had the one with Grandals a few weeks ago and then he immediately got injured. Hector had a good game on Saturday, apparently was quite good at Reading, again a game I didn't see. Has at times been absolutely atrocious this season, so hopefully he can continue on this little resurgence of one, potentially two games and be the man to try and shore us up at a difficult away game. But just as likely he'll return to form. Unfortunately, we'll see what Hector turns up on Saturday as well. But hopefully, like I say, hopefully he can give us something that we've been missing at times this season. Right, I think we've run out of time. I do want to say this is probably the last day to order a mug before Christmas. Our suppliers have said. So if you go to charltonlive.etsy.com, last chance to get a Charlton Live mug for that Charlton Live fan in your life for Christmas. charltonlive.etsy.com. Make sure you subscribe to us on all our various social media pages. So we're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter or X or whatever it's called. Make sure you give us a subscribe on there and on your podcast apps as well. So earlier on, All Hell Let Loose was asking what the plan is for Christmas. So we're here Sunday. We're here Thursday. Next Thursday will be our Christmas special where we'll have the Christmas quiz, etc., etc. I'm undecided about doing a show on Christmas Eve, the day after the game against Burton. I'll probably see who's about. I'm not going to, if people aren't about, I'm not going to force them to do a show on Christmas Eve. So we'll see what happens then. But maybe I'll let you know on Thursday if we plan on doing one after the Burton game. But yeah, we'll definitely be here for Sunday and Thursday. So make sure you join us then. Thanks to everyone who has joined us live this evening or on YouTube or via the catch-up services afterwards. Thanks to Ian from Reds Report who joined us earlier on, and massive thanks to Ben and to Tom. A pleasure as always to speak to you chaps.
Cheers, lads.
That was some nice therapy. Thank you.
Lovely stuff. So I'm Louis Mendes. Thanks for listening to Charlton Live, sponsored by the British Institute of Kitchen, Bedroom and Bathroom Installation. We'll be back on Sunday to look back at what will hopefully be a good result up at Barnsley. We'll see. We shall see you then.